Your Human and You. Written by Mad Max the Black. Chapter 23. The Coming Dawn. Part 1. Twilight passed the recording crystal to one of the guards as she closed the door to the interrogation room behind her. He tucked it firmly beneath his wing before saluting and trotting off. It had been a long process, and she hadn't been able to learn much from Darkflare. It was over now, and she was able to return home to relax. Turning to look at Sunny, Twilight sighed and lifted her saddlebag onto her back.
I think that about does it for today,
She grumbled, tightening his straps.
I don't think I can stand another minute talking with him. How about we head back to the library and get something to eat? Fine by me,
Sunny said, fighting back a yawn.
I'm exhausted, and I wasn't even the one doing the work.
Checking the last time to make sure that everything was fine at the guard station, the bear headed out into the evening sun. Twilight stretched her wings, a happy murmur escaping her lips. She was glad to be out of the building, and the gentle breeze felt nice on her tense muscles. Besides her, Sunny giggled.
Stressful time in there?
She asked, her eyes dancing with laughter. Twilight groaned as she felt her back pop in several places.
I will never understand why Max likes doing that so much,
she thought, straightening back up. It seemed like every time he stretched, some part of his body popped and cracked. She could tell when he got up in the middle of the night as the sound seemed to echo around the library. It always brought a smile to her tired face when she woke up to it. It was a sign that her human was still alive.
That's an understatement of the century,
Twilight growled, ruffling her feathers as she returned to the conversation.
He made me feel like a little filly on Nightmare Night. It was so unnerving, the way his eyes followed me wherever I moved. How could you stand working with him?
Sunny flinched before hanging her head.
It wasn't easy. I'll tell you that much,
she said softly.
I just tried my best to avoid him as much as possible. I tried to avoid all of them, actually.
She stared at the ground as they walked along, a small frown on her face.
If you didn't like working with them, then why did you?
Twilight asked, genuinely curious.
If you knew what they were doing was wrong, why help them in the first place?
Sunny chewed on her bottom lip before looking up. Twilight blinked in surprise at the look that Sunny gave her. Ever since she arrived, Sunny had been one of the happiest, go-luckiest mares Twilight knew. She could give Pinkie Pie a run for her bits on occasion. Even during stressful times, there was a hint of laughter in her gaze, like she knew everything would turn out all right in the end. Now, however, there was only tiredness, the likes of which Twilight had only seen once before, on one other pony.
Truthfully,
she said, sounding weary,
I needed the money. That's the reason?
Twilight scoffed, rolling her eyes.
You couldn't have found any other way to earn money than join up with criminals? That's easy for you to say. You're a unicorn, or were one, rather. For a Pegasus born and raised in Camelot, work isn't easy to find.
Sunny growled, returning her gaze to the ground.
Everything is run by unicorns. Hey, the whole damn city is practically ruled by them. Earth ponies and Pegasi are usually reduced to working menial jobs like cleaning streets or trash collection. And those don't pay near enough to support yourself. What about working for the weather factory?
Twilight asked, trying not to sound accusing.
That's an occupation for Pegasi. Oh, please. The weather in Camelot isn't controlled by Pegasi.
She huffed, a wing twitching at her side.
With the use of weather-controlling magic, the entire Camelot branch of the factory is run, controlled, and managed by unicorns. They use their stupid magic to make the weather and move the clouds. Why hire 20 Pegasi when 3 unicorns to do the same amount of work faster? You can get more bits that way. That's why I joined up with Darkflare and his crew. I needed the money. Although, I soon found out that even though what we did can be considered wrong on so many levels, I enjoyed it. Not because it was torturing and selling humans,
she added, noting Twilight's shocked expression,
but because I was working with humans. You see, to a human, there is no difference between a unicorn and a Pegasus. They don't see the horn or the wings or the lack thereof. They just see another living creature. If you're friendly to a human, they are friendly to you as well, regardless of who you are.
Tears swelled up her eyes as she talked, slowly running down her cheeks to fall to the ground below.
Why is it that a creature that can be considered dumber than most other animals can show more compassion to a pony than other ponies can? Why will a creature that can just turn violent so quickly not attack you if you show it a little kindness, but a pompous, arrogant unicorn won't even pause to help a pony in distress?
She turned her gaze up to the sky, blinking back tears as she did.
Why are Pegasi that grow up in Camelot considered next to useless?
She whispered. Twilight's ears splayed back. She chewed on her lip as she glanced at Sunny out of the corner of her eye, shocked at the sudden wave of negative emotions. She could understand where it was coming from, though. What Sunny said had some merit, much to Twilight's chagrin. Camelot was mostly run by unicorns, including the weather factory branch located there. Twilight knew that, yet she so blindly ignored the fact. But that wasn't the only reason she was uncomfortable about Sunny's revelation. The entire time Sunny had been living in the library, Twilight had been treating her poorly. Max and Spike would go out of the way to help Sunny if she needed it, and were even times where they would let her pick out what was going to be for dinner, or what everyone else was going to do for the day. The smile on her face whenever they did that was blinding. Twilight, on the other hoof, had just simply ignored the mare, or become frustrated if she got in her way. She had even shouted at Sunny once for putting a stack of books away before she was done with them.
I've been treating her like dirt.
Twilight thought, mentally kicking herself in the flank.
All because of who she was and what she did.
Swallowing nervously, Twilight decided it was time to fix her mistake. She slowly moved to Sunny, draping a wing over her back. She gasped slightly at the wing settled over her, but she didn't do anything to move away. In fact, she seemed to lean into Twilight's side ever so slightly.
I'm sorry,
Twilight said softly. Sunny glanced up in confusion, tears still rolling down her face.
It's not your fault.
She sniffled, rubbing at her cheeks with the back of her hoof.
Not for what happened to you in Camelot.
Twilight said.
Not for what you went through while you were living there. I'm sorry for how I've treated you when you were staying with us.
Sunny inhaled sharply, her eyes widening.
You didn't deserve it.
Twilight continued. It was her turn to hang her head.
And I'm sorry.
She was cut off suddenly as Sunny draped her own wings over Twilight's shoulder, their feathers brushing together. Twilight glanced over at hers and saw she was smiling weakly through her tears.
After what I've done, I deserved it,
she said.
No, you didn't.
Twilight replied, shaking her head. Sunny gave her a confused look, tilting her head to the side.
What makes you think that? If you hadn't joined up with Darkflare and his crew, you wouldn't have been able to help Max.
Twilight said, hugging tighter with her wing. Sunny's ears perked up at that, a surprised look on her face. She opened her mouth to say something, but Twilight pushed on.
And for that fact alone, I could forgive you. But that's not all you've done.
Sunny continued to stare at Twilight, her mouth open slightly. Twilight giggled softly at the sight.
Okay, that's actually kinda cute.
A blush quickly rose to Twilight's cheeks as she realized what she had just thought. Coughing, she continued with what she had been saying.
You not only left the group voluntarily, but you agreed to atone for your crimes. You've helped out around the library. You've helped with both Max and Spike. Also, and this is a big one,
she said, pulling her wing off of Sunny and turning to face her.
You helped me find Max when he had been abducted. You were beside me every step of the way. You helped us bring Darkflare down.
Twilight smiled at her before giving the Pegasus a proper hug. She draped her forelegs over Sunny's shoulders. She felt her flinch. After a moment, Sunny hesitantly returned the hug.
In my opinion,
Twilight said, not breaking the embrace.
you've already been pardoned.
She tightened her grip on Sunny, tears welling up in her eyes.
And you are not useless.
She whispered in her ear. Sunny trembled at that, a shuddering breath escaping her. After a brief moment of silence, she murmured softly into Twilight's ear.
Thank you, Twilight. That means a lot to me.
The pair broke the hug and smiled at each other, each wiping tears from the other's eyes. Sunny looked at Twilight, who could see a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. And like that, the tender moment was ruined when Rainbow Dash came crushing down in front of them. Both Sunny and Twilight jumped at the impact, looking over at Rainbow, who was laid flat out on her stomach, her eyes rolling in her head due to the force of her collision with the ground. The flock of birds flew in large circles above her, chirping madly. Twilight frowned. Some of them looked like Fluttershy's birds. Shaking her head, she ignored them and turned her attention to their prismatic friend.
Whoa there, Dash. Where's the fire?
She asked jokingly as Rainbow struggled to her hooves. Her laughter died when she saw the look on Dash's face. It was a look of fear and panic.
Twilight,
She cried, dancing on her hooves in agitation.
we've got trouble.
Max. Fane, my friend, we really must stop meeting like this. I grumbled as I regained consciousness. Shifting slightly, I immediately became aware that I was lying on a semi-comfortable bed. There was an annoying beeping noise coming from beside me, and I could feel something pinching in the crook of my right arm. I could feel bandages wrapped around my torso without even opening my eyes. I knew where I was. I was back in the freaking hospital. If this becomes a regular thing, I really should look into getting some form of health insurance. I thought, cracking my left eye open and looking around groggily. Back home on Earth, I had been in the hospital many times, but each time was to visit my grandmother, who had several medical problems. I myself had been admitted to the ER only once, and that was for a stomach virus that had me vomiting every 5 minutes. Now, however, I find myself back in the hospital in Equestria for the second time in less than 2 weeks. Coincidence? I'm not entirely sure, but something strange was going on, and my paranoia agreed. After all, I had been in Equestria for 5 months, and nothing remotely bad had happened. Now it seemed like my good luck had run out. Just fucking great. I tried to get a good look at my room I was in, but the bandage over my right eye made it harder to get a good scope on things. I slowly moved my head around, my left eye scanning the room gradually. A giggle next to my head caused me to glance to my left. A nurse was standing by the end of the bed, watching me with an amused smile on her face. She had a pure white coat, and her pink mane was done up in a bun underneath her nurse cap. A red cross adorned her flank, similar to the one on her cap. Her blue eyes twinkled with mirth when she looked at me.
Welcome back. We weren't expecting you to be conscious yet.
She said, chuckling softly as I just lay there, blinking at her owlishly.
It's good to see you again, even if it's so soon after you left last time.
I crinkled my nose at that, casting a cautious glance. It was almost like she knew that.
Before you start getting paranoid,
she began, her tone of voice remaining calm and collected.
Yes, I know that you're unique.
Seeing the alarm on my face, she shook her head and quickly added.
Miss Sparkle explained some of it last time you were here. Fluttershy filled in a bit more when she arrived with you earlier. I've got to say, it was rather hard to believe at first that you were actually intelligent, but I can start to see that it's true.
She giggled again as I closed my eye and groaned loudly, letting my head drop back into my pillow. Great, someone else knows the truth. Might as well just have a town meeting about it at the rate ponies are learning. As if sensing my distress, the nurse patted my shoulder attentively.
There,
she said, laughter hid in her voice.
It's not all bad. The only staff that know about your situation are the ones who are taking care of you. We figured it would be best to keep this as quiet as possible until Twilight could deal with it personally.
I opened my eye and gave her a weak smile, silently thanking her. She chuckled again before walking to the end of the bed to consult my medical charts. As she flipped over through the chart, she continued her one-sided conversation. All things considered, I was fairly surprised how well she was taking everything.
It was a good thing that Fluttershy got you here when she did. Otherwise, the Manticore's venom would have done its job. She treated your injuries back at her cabin, but upon discovering the Manticore barb embedded in your shoulder, she rushed you here. She was having a panic attack believing that she hadn't made it in time. Spike and the Crusaders will also be happy to hear.
My heart rate spiked instantly, causing the nurse to drop the clipboard and yelp in shock. I'd completely forgotten about the girls. Are they alright? Is Spike okay? What happened after I passed out? Struggling with the sheets around me, I attempted to stand. The nurse rushed to my side, gently yet firmly pushed me back to the bed.
Relax,
she ordered, her turn authoritative.
Relax. They're fine.
I slumped back into my bed, breathing heavily. My shoulders burned and a dull throb resonated from my lower back.
All of them had several cuts and scratches and were in a state of shock, but nothing major.
She nurse continued, keeping a firm hoof pressed against my chest, stopping me from rising.
Out of the 5 of you, you were in the worst condition when you arrived.
As my heart rate slowly returned to normal, the nurse returned to the foot of my bed, keeping her eyes on me as she walked.
As I was saying, Spike and the Crusaders will be happy to see you awake.
She continued, picking up the clipboard in her hooves again.
You had the Manticore's barb jammed into your left shoulder, nearly hitting your scapular spine. It was touch and go for a bit as we tried to remove it, but once we did and we got antivenom into your system, your condition stabilized. You also had several lacerations across your lower back, which we cleaned and bandaged, although it did require some stitches. Your feet were pretty scratched up as well, but we were able to heal most of the major cuts. Try and take it easy for the next couple of days, okay?
She asked, shooting me a smirk over the clipboard. I rolled my eyes, but a small smile touched my lips nonetheless. A smile that caused her to flinch, a shiver running down her spine. She managed to control herself quickly again. Returning the chart back into the basket, she proceeded to check my bandages to make sure none of my wounds were becoming infected. As she checked over me, I mused silently to myself. Why is it that most ponies that discover I'm smart don't freak out? Twilight and Sunny were understandable, but everyone else just seemed to take it in stride. I glanced down at the mare, who currently had her ear pressed against my chest, head bobbing in time with my heartbeat, a small smile on her face. Maybe I'm just not giving these ponies enough credit. Or maybe it's just this bloody town. Well, I did say that some ponies in this town were crazy. Glancing out the window, I noticed that the sun was just beginning to set. Unless I was mistaken, I had only been out for a few hours. Once the nurse was satisfied that I was healthy as I could be given the circumstances, she stood up and headed towards the door.
Well, everything appears to be in order.
She called back over her shoulder as she reached the door.
Now that you're awake, there are some ponies out here that have been waiting to see you.
As she said that, I immediately thought of Sunny or Twilight. Ooh, I hope Twilight isn't too upset with me. I was preparing my excuse for what had happened. I was not prepared, however, for the white blur that assaulted me the moment the nurse opened the door. I could only sit there, a dumb expression on my face as Rarity clung to me, crying her eyes out. Applejack followed her in, snickering slightly at the sight before her.
Thank you!
Rarity blurted out, sobbing to my chest.
You saved them! You could have left them behind and you saved yourself, but you didn't!
As she continued to cry, Applejack approached my bed, smiling sheepishly at me.
Thanks for keeping my sister safe, and her friends,
she said, her southern jaw cracking as she spoke. Her eyes were bloodshot, a clear indication that she had been crying earlier. I just gave her a small smile, wrapping my arms awkwardly around Rarity as she continued to cry. Her once perfect mane was disheveled, twisted and not present where normally they wouldn't be. It remained like that for several minutes, Rarity crying in my arms as Applejack stood beside me, on the bed, shuffling her hooves, looking anywhere but at me and Rarity. Yeah, it was actually pretty awkward. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Finally, the tears slowly began to cease. Sniffling, Rarity looked up at me and blushed slightly. Wiping her eyes with her hoof, she proceeded to extract herself from me, hiccuping slightly as she did so. Jumping down off the bed, she attempted to straighten her disheveled mane as she turned to face me. I rubbed my shoulder, the pain slowly increasing, but still manageable.
I am terribly sorry about that, dear.
She said, her voice cracking slightly.
It's just ever since her accident, I have been scared of something bad happening to Sweetie.
Closing her red-rimmed eyes, Rarity took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Applejack snickered behind her hoof, and I couldn't help but smile as well. After seeing Rarity be very prim and proper every time I've encountered her, to have her break down in front of me was kind of funny, even if the circumstances weren't. I'm sure she was very worried about her sister. I'm just glad that my body reacted before my mind did when it came to saving the fillies.
Anyway,
She said, opening her eyes, her voice sounding slightly stronger.
I just want to say that I am sorry for how I have been treating you. It was unprofessional and unladylike to do so, and for that I apologize. I was wrong about you, and I thank you again for saving Sweetie despite our tense relationship with one another.
I'd already begun to sign out my response when I realized that neither of them could understand hoof language. I guess I got too used to Sunny and Twilight being able to understand me. I facepalmed, which drew confused expressions from both mares, who glanced at each other before looking back at me. Gazing around the room, I searched for something to write on. I glanced down beside my bed, and my eyes widened as I saw my bag was lying on the floor next to it. Reaching down, I picked up the bag gingerly. As I placed it on the bed, I grimaced at the condition the bag was in. There were small patches of dried blood across the bag, most of which I was pretty sure belonged to me. On second thought, I was positive that all of it was mine, as I didn't really injure any of the manticores. The strap was barely hanging on, held together by mere threads. I opened the bag and fished out the notebook and the charcoal stick. The charcoal having been snapped in two, blood had soaked into the notebook as well, staining parts of the pages crimson. Flipping the notebook open to a relatively clean page, I scratched out my response. There's no need to thank me. I never would have forgiven myself if anything had happened to them. There was no need to tell them about the little argument I had with myself about leaving the fillies behind. Well, the next part of this chapter will probably have Twilight pop in, and that'll be a whole mess in itself. But it does seem good that Rarity is opening up, actually. You know, despite the issues she has with humans, it's good to see her grow a little bit. And it's nice, you know, especially with Sweetie Belle. Poor Sweetie Belle. The main six, honestly, yeah, they probably were pretty scarred from seeing a human getting ripped apart by manticores and just barely making it out of the fucking forest. So I imagine they're not doing too good, and Spike will probably be all teary-eyed and stuff too, so I'm excited for that. Who else are excited for that are my wonderful Patreons. Thank you my tier 1s, Angel Booth, Dreamless Portal, Hyperlink, 9 Game, Lost Everything, Michael McDonald, Dimmer Dark, CH, HKH4, Jason, Lord HiE, Macario, Pony Pony Entertainment, and Julius Costa Peters. My tier 2s, Captain Blueshadow, 212 Trooper, Andrew Ingram, Chaotic Mist, Cloudzaza, Danish Dash, Jay the Firewolf, DJMX 2000, Elemental Wolf, Solus Eclipse, Weewoo, David M. Coleman, Dioxa Team, Mackenzie Vicolas, G-Man 121 Garza, H1 Wolf King, Can Panzer, Mr. Chrissy Deacon, Nocturne, Nobody, Rocky 2522, Sticks, Potato 20, St. Gonk, Rihanna Dragon Wolf, Swordbrother Mordred, Volio Cod, and Max Garbanzo. A big thank you to my previous Titan tiers, Dark Guardian, Danish Dash, Maverick, and User 1842. And a big thank you to my current ones, Eclipse and Silent Titan. I appreciate your guys' support so much, and it means a ton to me. That aside, however, this has been Fireheart. Have a wonderful day.